So what else does Oklahoma need to pursue in the portal? We'll discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube, so hit that subscribe button. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jay, as Oklahoma sits here in the portal on the 2nd of January, where do you think they still need to be aggressive? At what position or position groups do you feel like Oklahoma still needs to add some guys?
So I know that the dead period is lifted starting on the 3rd, so on Friday. So you'll start seeing and hearing about players taking visits, and we'll definitely talk about that probably on Friday once we see some stuff become official or get confirmed publicly to be able to talk about. But right now, what the Sooners need, they need to get their hands on some defensive linemen. We need some additional trench play. You lose 3 seniors on the edge, and Caden Woolard, Ethan Downs, as well as Trace Ford. You lose a couple of linebackers in the portal and Phil Picciotti, as well as Lewis Carter. So you may need to add one more of those. Still think you need a corner to go along with that. So honestly, you need at least one person at each defensive position just to maintain good depth there. Now we've got 4 wide receivers that we brought in out of the portal. John, I guess the question would be, do you think Emmett Jones should go get one more? If a big name person drops from these playoff teams?
If there's somebody that is a legit wide receiver 1 that walks in and he is a day 1 starter for you right away, no competition, because he's got legit production at the collegiate level, at the FBS level specifically, then yeah, go for it. But if you're looking at a dude that has wide receiver 2 production, or he's been at the FCS level or a D2 guy, you got plenty of those guys. If you're looking at somebody who's a former 4-star that hasn't really done anything, you've got a bunch of those guys right now that you want to develop. So I'm not necessarily of the mind to take snaps away or take practice reps away from the guys that we've currently got on the roster right now. But if there's a dude like, say, an Evan Stewart from a year ago, or an Isaiah Bond from a year ago, or, hey, Ryan Williams, hey, what if you drop into the portal and you decide you want to come to Norman? By all means, I want to take you. I'm not going to tell you no. But for anybody that's just still kind of a guy that's trying to find his way and develop and make a name for himself, I'm kind of out on that at this point, because I want to see what we've got in that 2024 group that we had come into Norman, and then the 2025 group that you've recruited, including the transfer portal guys. We got to find out what you've got in those guys before you bring in another dude that's just got an okay resume or hasn't really done much. But if there's a name that maybe Oklahoma's recruited in the past and it just didn't go that direction, okay, if everything falls into line right now, then make it happen. If you liked him before, but there was a reason why it couldn't happen then, but it can happen now, kind of like we're seeing with Josiah Martin, then by all means, bring him in. But I'm with you on edge, man. Like I said in the first segment, what I'm seeing out of Ohio State, what we saw out of South Carolina this year, dude, you've got to find another really good edge rusher. R. Mason Thomas was really, really good, especially at the end of games, but you didn't have a consistent enough pass rush for 4 quarters a lot of times. Yeah. You were still relying on, hey, stop the run, get him into 3rd and long, and then just hope you can get enough rush. Too many times you were having to rely on the blitz and then just hope they kind of made a mistake. And you did get bailed out a lot of times by some inaccurate throws. We saw in the LSU game when Garrett Nussmeier was absolutely just rocket on. Yeah, there were no issues. The LSU Tigers offense had no issues moving the ball, especially in 3rd and long situations. So you need to find another pass rusher to be able to affect the quarterback, to go along with R. Mason Thomas. Love the potential we have in Adepoju Adebaware and Danny Okoye and Nigel Smith and Wyatt Gilmore. Love their potential. But again, I need a bona fide. I need a dude that right now is looking at being a 3rd-round pick because he's got 1 year of good production, trying to assert himself as a 1st-round pick after 2025. So that's kind of where I'm leaning as the portal priority at this point is find me another bona fide edge that can create a nice bookend and two guys that can get off the line of scrimmage in a hurry, get in the backfield in a hurry, and just make life a living for opposing quarterbacks.
No, I totally agree there. And the one thing we need a guy, because the good thing for us is I'd say with a player like a Danny Okoye or a PJ Adebawore, they probably need no more than 2 years of tape to really go out there and do something. Heck, look at R. Mason Thomas. He has 1 year of tape and he's already moved up into the conversation.
He's a top 50 pick right now if he decides to go to the draft.
If he decides to go to the draft, he could be top 50, top 75, no problem whatsoever, right? Just depending on who's making the mock. But yes, that's exactly right. So all you need really is 1 good year of tape of going out there and just abusing. I mean, I would like to get 2 years out of both of them, no problem. Danny, I want 3. Give me next season and the next 2 after that, and then go to the pros. But we just got to make sure that they're at that point where, like I said, setting the edge as well as always being in position, which I think that they're both learning it properly. PJ's got to get healthy. That's been an issue we've seen with him or whatnot. So totally agree with you there. We do need a bona fide, someone that has already put up production, is ready to go back out there at the field and play. But when I'm looking at wide receiver, there's one wide receiver that hit the portal recently, Noah Thomas, the wide receiver from Texas A&M, 6'5", about 190. He had 39 catches for 574 yards and 8 touchdowns this past season. That, to me, feels like he's probably a bona fide number 1 if you get him out there with the John Mateer and run that offense that Ben Arbuckle we know is going to put out there. So, you could buckle up, get him out there, and boom, get yourself a whole bunch of yards going, because he's shown us, even though he's dealt with injuries his whole career, he's shown us this past season he's healthy and he can go do something. So I think maybe one more wide receiver will probably be looked at. So I'm not gonna say that's out of the realm of possibility. But I'm with you. The biggest thing I would like us to see is we've had 3 classes with Brent Venables, and I'm ready to see some of those players play. Like, we're seeing them on the D-line. We're seeing them on the O-line right now. The wide receivers are building there. The running back room is 100% our own guys, besides Sam Franklin, which is kind of surprising. I thought he was going to end up portaling, but he didn't. Looks like he's going to end up being around. So because of that, looks like that room's going to be really busy with Torrey Blaylock coming in next season as well. It's going to be an intense. We've got a solid foundation. Now we need to see the development and see the guys play.
Yeah, and when I say you got to go get an edge, listen, if they like the development, if Miguel Chavis is sitting there looking at Danny Okoye and Adepoju Adebawore and looking at Wyatt Gilmore, Nigel Smith, and really liking where they're headed and the trajectory that they're on, I'm going to trust them, because we saw the same thing with R. Mason Thomas, right? Okay, so they went and got Caden Willard in the portal. Well, R. Mason Thomas actually stayed healthy, and he emerged this season. All it takes is just staying healthy sometimes for some of these guys to really break out. And if PJ can stay healthy all offseason and continue to develop and build his strength and build his pass rush repertoire, and Danny Okoye can continue to develop, then maybe they're ready to roll. And maybe you've got your bookend pass rushers with R. Mason Thomas and those guys. Assuming R. Mason Thomas is coming back. But if not, if R. Mason Thomas is not coming back, then edge is definitely a priority number 1. But I like the idea of a Noah Thomas, and consider the fact that Texas A&M's offense became a lot of the Marcel Reed option. The passing game really dropped off. A promising young quarterback in Marcel Reed, but not necessarily known for slinging it around. So if you like Noah Thomas and you're Emmett Jones and you're Ben Arbuckle and you're like, hey, there's my big body while I'm waiting on Jaden Gibson to get ready and be fully 100% healthy, Noah Thomas is my guy. We can add him to the offense right now, and he can be our bona fide number 1. So I think that's a really intriguing name to watch. We'll see if Oklahoma has any interest there. I imagine that they'll begin to have quite a few conversations with some guys that haven't been on the radar just yet, but are now going to be on the radar now that they're in the portal.
Yeah. Gotta keep in mind that we still got playoff games, and 5 days after their games end, they have that portal window. So you're going to see a lot more players jumping in the portal. Good players. You may see some starters that they're going to move on from. You're going to see a lot more players hitting the portal over the next 2 weeks. So actually next 5 days, because we just had 2 big games. And then once Georgia and Notre Dame's done, the loser of that one, you're going to have 5 days of their players as well. So keep your eyes open for that.
Yep, it's going to be a lot to talk about still, even though it's the offseason for Oklahoma football. It's a big offseason for them as they try to retool and bounce back from 2024. Is there a true freshman that can help them? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.